Hello, my name is Len. You know me as a podcast host for Targeted Justice v. Garland, a podcast about an extraordinary lawsuit. Today, however, we have an expert, so this part will probably go under conversations with an expert. His name is Brandon Iglesias. He is on the phone. There is no video. We couldn't figure out how to do a video. There's probably electronic interference. Nevertheless, Brandon, how are you doing?
I'm doing well. And yourself, Lynn?
I'm okay. Thanks for asking. Let me read something I extracted from your LinkedIn and Substack. Brandon Iglesias, you are photoelectrochemical engineer with cybersecurity, genetics, material science, neurotechnology, and cognitive science background. That is a high level of expertise. You list a couple of employers, but I also understand that you are no longer employed. Well, can you tell us a little bit about your background and what happened with ReactWell, which is your latest employer? Over.
So I started ReactWell in 2011, Lynn, and I'm still self-employed by ReactWell. I was on contract, a prime for the DoD and the Department of Energy in 2022. When Russia invaded Ukraine, I got shot up with neuroweapons that, in hindsight, were in perch mode, monitoring, and they just basically converted and attacked me. I turned down a lot of money from China and Russia in 2021. I honored my commitment to the U.S. government with the U.S. Army. And this is what I get in return. It is what it is. I was able to reverse engineer the system and back out of some of the wetware circuitry. And going forward, what I'm doing now is sharing this knowledge in the clear, since I'm not subject to a top secret or confidential clearance agreement. I'd help people also back out of it and address the wetware technology that can get inside of your body, and if it gets inside of it fully, it can mess with you. So to be clear, I am employed. I've been self-employed since 2011. I've taken contract work with different groups. I've worked in certain corporations to validate the level of contamination of wetware in people by other nation states in America. And I can share all that data here. My background, I've studied at pretty advanced sites, Singularity University, which is NASA Ames at Palo Alto. Study abroad there. I studied abroad in China at Tsinghua University. I studied abroad at MIT and Harvard, at Urbana-Champaign, at StartX and Stanford in Silicon Valley. So I've been to the different epicenters of innovation. The only one I haven't been to is Shenzhen, where a lot of this junk is coming out of. They basically blended the circuitry of electronics with the biological and synthetic biology components into a cognitive weapon system. And in my professional opinion, a lot of this junk is due to Shenzhen and the CCP party and a bunch of other groups that have kind of sold out their nation states to make a bunch of money. That's just my honest professional opinion. Over.
Okay, that's a very impressive background. I have a couple of follow-up questions. The first one, could you explain the nature of this of those monetary proposals that you said you rejected in 2021, and then in 2022 you have become a target of some kind of, would you describe it as a directed energy attack? Would you describe it as becoming a target individual? So that's my first follow-up question. Over.
Well, to answer your question directly, it's a cognitive weapon stack. And there's not just one technology. It's a whole portfolio of cognitive weapons. Just one part of it is a key signal, which some call a directed energy weapon. But that triggers the internal systems, which I call wetware, and a lot of other professionals in the industry do. They call it wetware. And there's various types of wetware as far as that goes. Regarding the first part of your question, which was the monetary, In 2021, CCP reached out to me through a shell group in the Caribbean, and I had them complete a form, and I planted some cookies on them, and it traced it back to Beijing, where they were reaching out, but they were posing as a investment group out of the Caribbean, like a Cayman Island, Bahama type thing. But that was the CCP interaction. The Russians were professional. I have a non-disclosure confidentiality agreement, so I can't get into specific numbers with them. But after consulting with my buddy, who's a retired president of Shell Oil Technologies, he advised me to not do business with the Russians. He did 3 business deals in Russia and had to leave the country, or else they'd kill him. That's just how they do business there. So based upon like my buddy's personal experience with the Russians, at least at some of the Russians, not all of them, I don't want to generalize, but he advised me to not do business with them. So I took his advice. And subsequently, when Russia invaded Ukraine, I got shot up with a whole neuroweapon stack. And at this point in time, I've reverse engineered it to the point that it's been in me for a while. It wasn't just put in me in 2022. It's been there for years. And it got activated with a key signal that then goes into like a cognitive degradation mode that slow kills you. That's the usage of the weapon. There have been video testimonials by retired intelligence community personnel talking about these older echelon systems and then the newer ones, which are the whole neuroweapon portfolio. And it is what it is. It's a wetware bug, like malware, but it goes inside of your body, and then it relays to machines and other wetware around you to backhaul the data for very advanced industrial espionage. My company operates at the industrial level with nation states on militaries and sustainable chemistry. Someone wanted our tech. They put a wetware bug in me, the CTO, and they got access to the tech. Where they failed is that they failed to remove me successfully. And then I'll reverse engineer their system literally from the wetware inside and out of me, which is creepy, but it's just how it is. That's where they failed. So they did succeed in stealing some material science secrets, and I want to make sure everyone's aware of this. Material science secrets are trade secrets. If you make something, synthesize it in a clean room lab, the only way you can get that information out is to hack someone's brain, because it's held close to vest. You don't email it. You don't do anything. You keep it in your brain. And this junk subliminally can interrogate you and pull that information out without you realizing it. And if you would have asked me 5 years ago that this tech exists, I would have told you no. But once you go through an attack where they try to remove you after they extract the information from you, so you're not a threat going forward, then you know it's very real and you respect it. And I was able to pull data, digging into the protocols that this thing can emulate. I've been able to disconnect. I've been able to verify and validate the different circuitry, if I'm on a clean circuit or not. They can put different circuits in your body, and that's why some people stutter, or why they can't communicate clearly, or why their speech is gerbled or like scrambled, because the circuitry scrambles their speech if they're on a bad circuit. And you can have more than one circuit in your body. You can have more than one of these mesogen-based wetware bugs in your body, and you get different channels within the circuitry. It is what it is. It's tech that's out there, and you don't want to get it in you. And that's been my focus, is on how to identify it, how to back yourself out of it, how to recover and repair from it, and how to move forward after getting hit with the wetware adversarially. Over.
Well, that's a very detailed, interesting explanation. I would like for our listeners to make it absolutely clear, because they probably have not heard the term wetware, which you're continuously using. So we know hardware, we know software, we know wetware. If you could give us like a one sentence definition of each, so we could understand the difference between wetware and other wares. Over.
Perfect. So hardware, computer hardware, is a physical silicon-based circuit that resides outside of your body. You interact with it through a keyboard or through voice interaction, or if you're ADA, I would say ADA damaged, so you have a disability and you have to interact through various other methods. That's how you interact with hardware. Software, it runs on the hardware at various levels. There's firmware at the driver side level. That's very low level, like machine language, assembly language stuff programmed before. And then there's higher level, more abstracted versions that's actually byte-based compiler or interpretive code. And then that actually gets displayed in a graphical user interface. And there's something called the OSI reference model that kind of goes into all of that. If you're curious to dig into the software and how the software interacts with the hardware. This other class is called wetware. Think of it as a hybrid that has a biological component and a synthetic biology like silicon component that's a wiretap inside of your body. So instead of you thinking someone has a wire on them if they're in a meeting with you, you can like rip open their shirt and see the wire taped to their chest. The thing's inside of you. And the wire follows the vagus nerve system. And the wire is called wetware. And there's various types of wetware that have been developed by various groups around the world, nation state level corporations, terrorist groups, organized crime, anyone who basically plays at a higher level has this tech. They just don't talk about it. And here's the catch. Some of the people who would talk about it, if they got this junk in them all the way, they're literally cognitively not able to talk about it because this wetware junk is so integrated into their body, it caps them from talking about it or thinking about it. That's how advanced the technology is. And it's called wetware. That's a generic overlay of it. Military uses it, intelligence community uses it, other groups use it and abuse it. And that's what went down on me, was in an adversarial use case. Over.
Thank you for that explanation, Brandon. What I would like to know is, how do you think this wetware gets into your body? Where it is located? Is it located in the brain? What are the ways to detect that you have that wetware inside you? Over.
Terrific question. So the wetware, all the wetware these days, it's all non-invasively dosed. So you can get it by breathing in the air that has this stuff dosed in it. You can get it by drinking something. You can get it by giving someone a handshake, someone a hug. Even just being in close proximity with someone, some of this wetware junk can transfer. So it's pervasive. It's everywhere. That's essentially wetware, non-invasively dosed. It can get into you pretty much by living now on Earth. You're going to have synthetic biology and wetware. Some call it biosensors, but I call it wetware. That's a good generic term for it. That builds upon prior knowledge in hardware and software and biological systems. But to answer your other, I guess the other part is how, once it gets in you, how can you detect it? So there's different versions of it. There's what I call the good version. If you have a country, a nation state that you're part of that's trying to defend your health and wellness, they don't want to hurt you. They want to defend you because you're part of their GDP, right? Like, there's always bad apples. I'm not going to go there, okay? But just on average, nation states that are democratic, not techno-communism, authoritarian nation states like China, CCP, they want to keep their people healthy, right? And they are professional enough to agree to disagree on certain topics and have an educated, non-hostile review and discussion about the potential solutions and why some make sense and some don't. The issue is when this wetware stuff gets inside of you, it can grow, and it grows through energy inputs into your body and mass inputs into your body. So let me explain. Say you get dosed with a small pin top vial of junk, non-invasively. And when I say the junk, it's synthetic biology wetware. You breathe it in, it goes into your nose, it gets into one of your sinus cavities. You got, 3 primary sinus cavities on each side. Technically, I think there's a 4th one in the middle, but anyways, I'm not a medical doctor, but you got sinuses, you can get stuff in them. It'll grow in your sinus. Then from there, it can breach into your brain, which has a lot of electricity. Your brain is about 20 to 30 watts. That's what it consumes at an instantaneous point in time. And then it can use that to grow. It goes from your brain to your vagus nerve, to your ears, to anything electrical in your body, down your spinal cord, which is all the electrical components. And then it can motor up your body. After it gets into your brain, then it can go through your vagus nerve corridor and then literally wire instrument up your whole body. And it takes time, right? It doesn't happen overnight. It takes years, maybe decades. But there's some wetware that's more aggressive than others. Like the CCP, they're using a fungus as part of their synbio wetware. And there's certain critical resonance frequencies. If you dose your body with it, like a fungus, you're not supposed to have fungus in your body, right? It's just common sense. But you'll feel the junk vibrating inside of your body if you're hitting your body with a pulsating right frequency at critical resonance responses of fungal material that CCP has built these wetware adversarial systems off of. There's other wetware that's not fungus-based, right? And you won't get a response from that. And that's how you can tell if you got more than one system in you, basically. Non-invasively, using commercial off-the-shelf systems. So to answer your question specifically, the wetware, it's non-invasively dosed. You get it from the environment. It can be programmed through chipsets that are hardware-based, that are neurotechnology wetware COM enabled. So in other words, you buy a computer and it's made from China. It's going to work to connect you to China's system and link you to China, even if you're in a democratic nation. If you buy a computer from Japan, South Korea, or America, or Europe, or India, it's going to work to link you to that alliance or that nation state system. It's just how the technology works. And you have to be careful with what you buy. Buying the cheapest thing, the old adage is true. Pay me now, pay me later. If you're buying cheap China hardware, China's going to steal you now with this wetware. Just how it works. Pay me now, pay me later. Over.
Incredible. Brandon, I know that you, probably because of your professional exposure, you talk a lot about CCP and their wetware, their perversion of hardware, and it sounds from reading your article that you are sort of emphasizing that this is probably the leading source of wetware and this cognitive intrusion. But we also know that the Russians are doing it, that NATO countries doing it. Because of Havana syndrome has been on the front pages. We know about all these diplomats and spies, and there are now several hundred confirmed cases. Would you consider those Havana syndrome a part of this wetware invasion? And would you give us your personal estimate? What percentage of these cases are NATO, US, China, and Russia? Because lately it's been all about Russia. And when I heard the AHI Congressional Committee, when they actually started talking about this attribution question, they actually have only 4 confirmed cases where they have had Russian spies within the proximity of AHI or New strikes or Havana syndrome. I'd like to hear your opinion about that.
Sure, I can provide context, like historical context, that gives me a unique perspective that others just don't have because you haven't had the life experiences that I've had. I'll be very specific about those, and then from there, that kind of gears my outlook and perspective. Okay, and I can only speak to what I know. I'm not going to speak to something I don't know for sure, because that would be wrong. I don't want to mislead anybody. But I will speak to what I do know and what I have experienced and what I have reverse engineered. And by all means, it's not a threat. It's a straight up invasion. And the technology is very covert, extremely covert. All right. So here's the deal. 2013, Obama did the American Brain Initiative, publicly disclosed that in 2013. China did their Brain Initiative in 2016. However, in 1999, the CCP published some documents that the intelligence community declassified, stating China's objective for non-conventional irregular warfare tactics on democracy. And I published that document, republished it. It's on some of the platforms that I distribute legitimate referenced sources. And what it said is they're going to do irregular warfare on democracy. And they're going to weaponize their manufacturing base to do that, to amplify the attack. So basically, in my experience, I've studied in Beijing at Tsinghua University, which is where Z studied at for his chemical engineering degree. My first degree was chemical engineering in undergrad. And in Beijing, what they did at the hotel where we stayed at for the study abroad, their tactics are very covert. Like, most of the guys that were traveling with me, they got dirt on them. The little massage girls that supposed to give you a massage, they do more than that. And I guarantee you they had, the old school TV cameras and all that junk in the hotel rooms. I think it was like a Hilton that we stayed in. So that tactic right there, I didn't fall for. That's a honeypot, right? So anyone traveling to study at key universities or key things in China, they have it architected to get dirt on these people for later on extortion, right? So that was in 2010 when I went there. They didn't get me there, but that went down. The pollution there is horrible. Everyone had face masks on in 2010 from the Gobi Desert dust, as well as just the pollution from the coal power plants. The experiences that I started to have with respect to anomalies, I would say, I had a meeting in Los Angeles with a former contact that was my business neighbor in Honolulu, Hawaii, at an office in Harbor Court Plaza by Aloha Tower in Oahu in Hawaii, circa 2001, 2002. I was doing some technology stuff. I reconnected with one of the people in Los Angeles, and he had me meet with some people that he does business with in China. And that meeting, one of the guys examined like my head. It was really weird. It was like he was looking at my brain, and then the other guy said that I'm like very intelligent. It was a guy that I'd worked with before that had been going to China for annual business meetings with the required CCP communist government representative, right? And this guy, I'm not going to get into the details out of respect of him, but very wealthy individual, but works with CCP money, Sing Capital and all that type of stuff. At that time, I had no clue the depth of what China was doing. So I kind of reconnected with my contact from Hawaii. And when I was in Los Angeles, I'd catch up every now and then, right? And then I met with a guy who owns most of the warehouses in downtown Los Angeles area. And keep in mind, Los Angeles, the city's GDP is bigger than most states in the United States, right? So that city is its own nation, basically. And it's huge, okay? It's a huge powerhouse city. And it is tied to manufacturing and importing from China, okay? So through these interactions in Los Angeles, I helped this dude who has manufacturing sites in China and then export stalls, warehouses in downtown Los Angeles. Vet some technologies just kind of pro bono. And then through the Kauffman Foundation out of Kansas City, I was a 2013 Kauffman Global Scholar. Through that, I got connected with a group in Los Angeles to help build out the nation's largest advanced clean tech manufacturing and prototyping facility for pre-manufacturing runs. I prepared the space with the Secret Service. The VP to the POTUS was there. We prepared it for them. I gave John Holdren, the POTUS's science advisor, a tour of my work. And then the city of Los Angeles had us, by request, give a CCP delegation a tour of the advanced prototyping center that I helped build out. And I think during that time period, 2016, 2017, China already did their BRAIN initiative. The delegates that they were sending out to other nation states to learn and do recon, they were dosing with this material. So I think 2016, 2017 is when I got dosed, and it took that long for it to kind of grow and network and, you know, kind of connect me to their AI hive mind. And they've got, you know, work published on this. If you go look on it, you can see it. So I think when I gave the CCP delegation, or even before that meeting with the proxy business people that did work with the CCP, which I had a friendly relationship with one of them, like all the way back to 2002, 2001 in Honolulu, Hawaii. It just kind of caught me off guard. I wasn't aware of the depth of the industrial espionage that the CCP was doing with this advanced wetware technology. And since then, the anomalies, quote unquote, were brought to light. Specifically in 2021, I kept getting like phone calls and they kept disconnecting. I'd get interference on a call where I'd hear someone else. And I thought it was my phone or the telco. It was a wetware that they had dosed in me. So I said, all right, how am I going to test wetware in an urban environment, which is completely congested with comms, communications, everything? So in 2021, when a hurricane hit New Orleans, I stayed, and it freaked out my family. I told them I was going to go meet with them in another city in Louisiana, and I never went. I actually drove out like I was leaving, but then sheathed all my data comms with Faraday nickel and silver bags and went back into New Orleans. I had my cell phone on me, which is a 4G omnidirectional, not a 5G. So when the power went out, the whole city of New Orleans went dark. Literally, this is what I had to do to figure out something that was an unknown was really screwing with me. When all the power went out in New Orleans with the hurricane, I turned my phone on, okay, to get comms to the telco towers that have, you know, generators, backup generators. And I turned the Wi-Fi on my phone. So I've got my phone on with 4G, and I turned the Wi-Fi on, okay? That should be the only Wi-Fi signal. And this is in Uptown New Orleans by Commander's Palace, just for location so people understand. In a condo that I renovated and rebuilt when I moved there from St. Croix in the Virgin Islands. So I turned my smartphone on, and I'm supposed to only have one Wi-Fi access point, okay? Guess what? After several minutes, another Wi-Fi access point starts transmitting. Nothing else is powered on around me. So then I repeat the process several times to verify it. So I thought at that time, someone had a Wi-Fi, like battery powered, next door to me in the bed and breakfast that was spying on me. My address at the time where I lived was 2721 St. Charles Avenue, Condo 2B as in boy, New Orleans, Louisiana, 70130, United States of America. The bed and breakfast next to me, or the people above me, or maybe the people across from me, I thought might have been spying on me with some type of device. And it wasn't until 2022 when Russia invaded Ukraine, when the wetware spy bug went from perch spy mode to conversion, electronic waterboarding attack mode, that I figured out the actual spy was wetware inside of me. where I live, my neighbor, one of my neighbors is Trump's attorney, and some of the other people are high-end people, State Department, that type of stuff. So just, to be clear, I literally went into a city, got hit with a hurricane on purpose, to then during the blackout of an entire urban environment, reverse engineer and figure out what was going on in a clear spectrum environment, as clear as you can get in an urban environment. So people evacuated, all the wetware left New Orleans. There's a lot of people have this junk in them, and I'm going to get into that part of the conversation next. So you had all these people that left, really not many people were there. And then you didn't have the power on, and then this emulator device, Wi-Fi, kept turning on. So that's 2021, moving into 2022. This wetware thing goes from perch spy mode to attack mode, basically, slow kill degradation mode. In 2022, I had some weird stuff that went down. I got rammed. My truck got rammed by somebody who probably had this wetware in them as well. And I think the way the wetware works from reverse engineering it acts as a bio-beacon. And it can link up with another person and then phone home to the AI in China. And then it can instruct the other person if they have the wetware motor cortex up in their body to like jerk the steering wheel and ram the other person. That's how a lot of these ramming events are happening in the United States. And just to be clear, I'm a member of InfraGard with the FBI and industry. Just to put that out there as well. So my truck got rammed, messed up the front part of my axle in my truck, shredded the Mercedes-Benz that rammed me. Problem there, mess with oscillations. Then a couple months after that, my truck gets EMP'd, all the electronics fried, 7,000 worth of damage. And then from there is when I really started to take a very close look at wetware and how to counter strike it and how it works. I went to various locations, Lynn, like you referenced, you did. I didn't go to the quiet zone, but I went to the country away from a lot of people. And it got a lot better in the country. I went back into a city environment with dirty, harmonic, pulsating magnetic fields, and it got a lot worse. It got worse for this reason. And this is going to answer your question on who's doing this. You get 170 million TikTok users in America. TikTok is a neurotechnology content delivery platform that can optogenetically byte-based program these wetware wires inside of your body, wire taps inside of your body. In that neighborhood, the electrical grid was very dirty. And one of the ways the neurostrike propagates is through pulsating magnetic fields that can pierce Faraday enclosures pretty easily and associated systems. Therefore, when I went into a suburban neighborhood with a lot of TikTok users, I got attacked horribly. And that's where I got really scrambled and messed with. And that was in 2022 and 2023. I realized what was happening with the magnetic field and got myself out of that environment. And I'm still dealing with the ramifications of that, decontaminating and getting better. The magnetic fields allow the wetware to communicate. So if you have a neighbor that has like TikTok and they've got all this wetware junk in their body and you don't, but you're in a coupled, dirty, harmonic magnetic field pulsating environment with a non-hardened electrical grid, it'll spread into you. And it can do it a couple of ways. Say they got a cat. Their cat comes and hangs out at your place, right? Just as it's a cat. It walks around other houses. That cat has synthetic wetware in it, and it's walking by you. You go pet the cat. Some of that junk transfers into you. You're also coupled with a magnetic field to the wetware from your neighbor. And that's how the neurostrike spreads, stuff like that. So petting an animal or dog in the neighborhood isn't safe anymore. And that's basically what it's come to. So to answer your question, I think CCP is the worst actor. They're manufacturing the material. They're amplifying it with their manufacturing base that provides the world with dirt cheap electronics, neurotech enabled. So they are able to amplify the neurostrike effect. So even if you're not using their stuff, they can still get to you through your neighbors, through dirty magnetic fields, through Wi-Fi. The Navy just demoted somebody who used a rogue Wi-Fi access point in one of their ships, one of their vessels. And the reason why is it spreads this type of weapon. The spectrum does, magnetic fields do, audio does, vibrations do. I mean, it's bizarre, but it is what it is. That's where we live in. We live in a world where wetware is everywhere. It's pervasive. You have an active neurostrike around you. You won't know if it's active unless you're tagged. In other words, you can be in a neighborhood right now with people with all this wetware junk in it, them from China, that's overtaking NATO's system. It's a more aggressive fungus-based wetware. And you won't know it because you're within a certain profile. But if you go outside of those bounds, you speak out against Z or the CCP, and one of the wetware TikTokers hears you, it'll report it back to China's AI. They already hacked all the license plate DMVs in the nation, and they'll track your ass until kill you and remove you because you're not supportive of the CCP regime. So I think the worst actor in the world right now is the CCP as far as neurotechnology goes, because they have 170 million Americans at least connected to the CCP system now in some way, shape, form, or fashion. And it's going to continue to grow and spread. And, you know, I think the CCP is the worst actor right now. Yes, other groups have done it and used it in the past. There's weird virtual nation states that do it. That's what Soros' Open Society Foundation is, OSF. Scientology has used it. That's how they dupe people whenever they read, quote unquote, the little piece of paper that they get when they move up a level. It's a codex, and it unlocks certain circuits or adds certain circuits when you read a codex. And Scientology has worked hand in hand with the intelligence community in America. Anyone who has done any research into that knows that. And I speak to information that I know firsthand by people that I know and trust, just to be clear. This isn't me just saying stuff. So wetware exists. It's been around for a long time. It's just that someone made a version of it that literally spreads uncontrollably, and it connects you to dirt cheap hardware that China has everywhere, which is part of their military's irregular warfare strategy overlaid with their surround and enclose strategy. But now it's surround and enclose with wetware in your mind so that you become cognitively handicapped to not even detect it actually over time. Over.
Okay. Well, I understand from your explanation that up to 170 million Americans, which is half of the country, has been invaded with the wetware. How about those people who experience actually these attacks in the country? 30%, according to Mr. Edgar, of all AHI neurostrikes are domestic, so that's 30%. That's a lot of people. So do you think that, and his hypothesis, it's the Russian doing it. Your hypothesis, because of your background and your knowledge specifically about what CCP is doing, that it's probably a majority of it is coming from China. Nevertheless, we also have similar technology. Dr. Giordano talks about bio-nano merging of these technologies, which is an ongoing and active DARPA project. So from your explanation, and correct me if I'm wrong, that the majority of these individuals targeted with this energy, with these attacks, are from China. But what's the percentage of the Russians attacking? And I'm talking domestically. I'm no longer separating spies and diplomats and the civilian population, because we now have plenty of diagnosis of Havana syndrome among civilians domestically. What's the ratio?
I would look at the hardware. So to answer this legitimately, I would just look at the hardware. How much hardware has Russia manufactured with neurotech in it that's been exported into America? How much hardware has China done? What about Europe? What about American hardware? And then what about the software users? So the hardware, just to be clear, the hardware is neurotechnology pipeline delivery system. The software is the content that flows through the neurotechnology pipelines. And you just have to run a ratio analysis and do a pie chart. And I'll do that as a follow-up and post it. And I'll send you the link. And that'll give you an estimate of, who's doing what in your specific country. That's the simplest way to look at it. And then, of course, you need to look at the wetware flows into and out of your country. If someone from another country that uses CCP Huawei towers and all their software comes into your country, they're wetware enabled for CCP. And if you from America that don't touch any CCP hardware go into another country, then that's America's wetware system in that other country. And those flows are what people need to look at, as well as the hardware. So you have hardware flows, traditional export, and you have people traveling, intermingling. So you can have more than one of these systems in you at a time. And I think that's where a lot of the AHIs and UBIs are coming from, is you have someone with an American system in them, they get contaminated with this other adversarial system, whoever's it is, high probability CCP based upon the numbers, that then antagonizes the crap out of you internally to degrade you because you're not CCP compliant. Does that answer your question with what I can give now and give you a follow-up? I'll give you a pie chart with an estimate that has hardware exports and also the population transfer with wetware. Over.
Yeah, that will answer my question. I would like to see that pie chart. I'm looking forward to seeing it. And I understand that your explanation is somewhat complicated, that, you're using, American hardware is used on it, and then CCP hardware is mixed up with it, and then when bad things can happen. I'm not rejecting it. We just need to follow up on every hypothesis, and I would like to purely applying scientific methods and then falsifying one hypothesis at a time. I understand your position. This is, I think it's a valid position. I think it's a little bit biased by what you've been exposed to, because people who are domestically attacked by directed energy weapons connected with their, wetware, they're also being harassed by members of the Fusion Center. And you mentioned that you're a part of InfoGuard. This is a part of the network that is involved in harassing American citizens. And I wonder if you have discussed this with other members of InfoGuard, and have you ever raised a question that is it CCP, is it the US, and how can we differentiate?
To answer your question directly, yes, I have. I got connected with Robert McCrate, who you've interacted with as well through InfoGuard membership. That's how I actually found a lot of James's content, Giordano's content. Everyone, just to be clear, everyone on Earth has their own internal bias. I'm speaking from my biased perspective, but honestly, with what I know and what I'm aware of. I think the best way to summarize the current state of this world right now, because we are at neuro war, we are in an active neuro war that most people can't see, which is probably a good thing for them to not see it actually, because it definitely changes your world perspective once you figure it out. My best summary and why people can't figure this thing out, it's a mess right now. You have various systems warring against each other covertly, cognitively manipulating people. It's a mess right now. That's my summary of the active neuro war that's out there. America's had this system for a while, man. Okay, the CIA and the KGB both have been well aware of this system. Okay, the Cold War ended for a reason. Okay, the system is set up or if someone gets close to figuring it out, it's got wetware in people. It's had wetware in a lot of the key people for a long time, or it monitors through a cyber physical system through your searches online. And when it finds someone that's getting too close that may be a threat, it identifies and flags that person, right? So that's where the historical use of the fusion centers and all that stuff come in for terrorism, but also for protecting the system. The issue is with the neurostrike weaponry, wetware that's adversarial that CCP's deployed, is it false positives people from within the system. So in other words, you get wetware in you, cybernetically communicating with the national defense system, false information about you and what you're doing. Your own nation state's national defense, automated by AI, cyber-physical or bio-cyber-physical system, will go after you. And the fusion center people and all of them, they're all linked to this system. So yes, it is both true that some of the fusion people have hit Americans. And yes, it is true that the Americans have wetware in them by an enemy that false positives the American system. So you can't blame the fusion center people, man. They have this junk in them. The junk's contaminated by the CCP neuroweaponry. Over.
Well, I can't imagine that I wouldn't blame somebody for invading someone's privacy, intimidating them, stalking. Vehicular stalking is especially extremely dangerous, or even, going to their places of residence, sneak and peek. That's an intrusion on someone's privacy. I can't just let it go because this is totally un-American, totally unconstitutional. And I have a problem believing that the CCP controls the fusion centers. I mean, through you explaining it through a series of events, but ultimately, that's what you're telling me. It's like saying that the Russian spies are controlling people at the fusion centers. It just doesn't fulfill my sort of common sense requirements, even though I'm completely open to new explanation, new hypothesis. And you might be right because you have the expertise. Your perspective might be absolutely correct. I just don't have this confidence that you have that the majority of these domestic cases are CCP driven.
You make a valid point. I'll give you a concrete example of how someone can hack into our system. It needs to be brought to light. So you get a CCP wetware bug or some virtual nation terrorist group wetware bug, right? Other groups have it besides CCP, but a lot of those groups are proxies to the CCP. So technically they're not CCP, but through indirect relationship, through use of the tech, they are. So you have a fusion center employee. They live in a suburb, got underground electrical, dirty, pulsating magnetic fields. Their neighbors use TikTok, got over 170 million TikTok users. The magnetic field pulsing, or the Wi-Fi from the neighbors, or the vibrations when they're cutting their grass, or the audio from when they're cutting their grass with a lawnmower or weed eater, synchronizes with the fusion center's wetware. And over time, since they live next to each other and they share a magnetic field, the whole 9 yards, the TikToker junk, CCP wetware junk, contaminates the fusion center person. So they're going into work, the little wetware wiretap in their body from China that they don't know is there, tells them to go look into this person. They get a bad feeling about this person Joe Schmo. And then for whatever reason, they start to mess with Joe Schmo with all the systems because CCP or terrorist group proxy wetware spy bug got into a fusion center person with access to all those systems from the inside out to go screw with somebody that's a threat to another nation state or to another corporation or to some organized criminal group. And, I'll give two specific groups. You have the triads from China. That's an organized crime group that the Chinese weaponized with fentanyl to hurt a lot of other nation states, right? And you have other groups in other nation states that don't care for the triads. It's the whole organized crime part of the world. And they're at war, right? I've had conversations with people, just given the nature of where I've been in life. I'm not saying this is who I am, but even people in that part of the world, as far as how they operate, have chosen to not do business with CCP, just to give you a heads up. That's how bad it is right now. So even in that side of the world, that's how bad it is. And to reiterate on the concrete example, all it takes is to have a couple of neighbors with this junk in them, and you'll eventually get contaminated and synchronized. And it can monitor you. So if you're going somewhere or doing something, it can mess with you. The way the vehicle tracking works, like the whole thing with the vehicles that you mentioned earlier, I'm going to add to that. The way that works is these people that have the wetware in them, or the people that have a smartphone that they put on their dashboard to where the camera's looking out on the road, and it's hacked by China or another group. It reads the license plate number with computer vision, machine vision, and then it feeds it back to an AI, and then it dispatches all the other wetware in people and junk to then mess with the person driving around. So if you're getting messed with, like driving around and harassed, just pull your plates, man, or change your plates. And you'll find out very fast how quick it stops. If you have the wetware in your body, though, and it's transmitting transverse wave signals like a biobeacon, go check out this company called Mo's Equipment. I don't own any stock in them. I have no favoritism with this company. I've just purchased from them, and I like their product. Mo's Equipment, MOSEQUIPMENT. And they have silver nickel Faraday caps and beanie caps if you live in a colder environment. And it blocks your biobeacon from the adversarial wetware, so you can have clear comms again as well.
Well, thank you, Brandon. This is a lot of information to digest, and I'm sure we'll have another conversation, especially after you create that pie chart, which I'm extremely interested to see. My very last question about those 25 cases of Havana syndrome patients that came directly from Havana, Cuba, that nobody can deny their authenticity. Their diagnosis is still valid. Even the CIA can deny there's no pre-existing condition, there's no previous concussion. If you had to choose just one actor who's done it, who would that be?
So I have a buddy that was in Cuba when everyone got shot up. He was just on another island. He got lucky. Okay. And I'm speaking from that experience and those interactions. I would say the Cuba stuff is real. Time tells all truths. Look who's in Cuba now. China is. CCP is. The wetware, nanos, synthetic biology that gets in your body, it's a persistent state. It lives on the electrical system, your vagus nerve system. So the people experiencing it, they could have gotten dosed non-invasively by CCP or another proxy group, terrorist group. But the fact that China's in Cuba now tells you that was China. Time tells all truths, man. The 25 people that you said, Len, if I heard you correctly, they have synthetic biology in them, man, that's linked to CCP. And the most advanced form of that is a mesogen with a nemetic crystal. And the way that tech works and the way it can continually persistent state harass, it just requires a seed, one part of a crystal. So you take a crystal and you link it using near field physics to a transmitter, AI system. And you take all the little fragments of the crystal and you put it in all these different people. And they're all freaking linked to that transmitter. And the only way for the people to get better is to get rid of the freaking seed in their body. which takes a lot of time. And you have to be very careful with what you eat, who you interact with, what signals and frequencies you're around to get the seed out. And you can have more than one seed in you, from CCP, from America, from another system. The crystal seeds, which are part of the mesogen emetic crystal tech stack in wetware, in my opinion, are the most advanced adversarially deployed forms now. You have other ones which are like DNA-based crystals as well. But by all means, there's 25. From what I've reverse engineered and figured out, that's why I'm able to have this conversation right now. If I didn't figure this out, I'd be dead by now, literally. And I'm speaking, just to be clear, I'm cognitively clear and able to speak on this call because I have a near field transmitter on my body. I have an ELF transmitter on my body, and I'm using 5G, not an omnidirectional cellular communication system. And I have a solar nickel MOS equipment cap shielding the adversarial wetware junk in my body. And on top of it, on my phone and Android, I'm able to verify the wetware circuitry is not active, so I can actually have a clear, coherent conversation. So to answer your question, the 25 people, they have an advanced feed-based system that is able to link to the near field. It doesn't just require far field physics to link. It links through the near field. The near field works through the vacuum.
Well, there we go. A brand new hypothesis about the Havana syndrome victims diagnosed and confirmed by the medical establishment. As far as I know, as far as we know, they have not been checked for the presence of wetware. And you just told us that you have strong beliefs and evidence that CCP is behind the original Havana syndrome attacks. That's news to me, and I am looking forward to the feedback from our listeners about this hypothesis and about everything else that you said. And I have a feeling we will be talking again. Lots of information. I know you will get some negative comments because you're part of InfraGard, and our listeners know that InfraGard and fusion centers and the FBI, they're working in cahoots, and the leading hypothesis that these targeted individuals affected by neurostrike attacks, it's done through FBI's placement of these people on the terrorist screening database, which is highly illegal. We're fighting it in courts. We now have 4 ongoing lawsuits. So somehow we will need to reconcile our legal and scientific theories, but that's what it's all about, having a conversation and getting to the truth. And for that, thank you, Brandon.
You're welcome, Lynn. Thank you for the opportunity, and I hope you have a terrific day, sir.
Thank you. You have a good day.